Hello, my name is Tina Tate, and I am the author of this book, The Art of Retirement, Opening the Next Door. All right, so today I have the privilege of interviewing my friend Julie Antioho. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Tina.
Julie is spending a few days with us here in Florida, and it's been a delight to have her. I'm wondering, Julie, if you could tell our audience about your role as a perioperative director. That is the nursing role she had before she retired, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I never thought I would have the director's role. I always thought I'd be a part-time OR nurse.
Mm,
But I just really have a compassion for my patients
mhm,
because they're so vulnerable when they're sleeping or when they're just facing the unknown.
mm,
And I enjoyed relationships with surgeons, and
mhm.
I just loved coming alongside my staff. So it was a great career. I um, started as an OR nurse in the rooms, and then throughout the years, I took on different leadership roles along the way.
Right. And now I've known Julie for, we were just saying, maybe since I was 29. So it's almost 40 years. And we raised our kids together. And this is before she was ever a nurse or anything like that. But she had those qualities of coming alongside people and mentoring them and leading them, and just the gift of hospitality above and beyond. So I could see how that job that you had totally went along with the gifts that God gave you in the beginning, right?
Mhm.
And so I just think it's so cool how you were led into that role. What advice can you give to maybe people who um, are thinking about nursing as a career? What advice can you give them to help them determine if it's for them?
I think specifically for the OR, it's a real different environment because surgeons there can be real tense situations, and so you can't take things personally in the OR.
Mm,
That's
mm,
probably the big thing. And then it doesn't happen overnight to learn
mhm.
all that there is to learn. I mean, I even when I retired, there's new technology. I laugh when I think about the minimal technology there was in 1975 when I became an OR nurse for the first time,
Yeah.
and it was yeah, technology has changed. And so you have to always be willing to learn and to not be hard on yourself because it takes time to learn those
It
things.
does take time. Wow. And what was something maybe that happened in your career that you can look back and say, oh, that was a God thing?
Well, I think even cleaning house for Jane Dillenberg
Mm,
when I was in high school, and she was an OR nurse, and um, I would vacuum her house,
mhm,
and then we would sit down and talk OR nursing. Just it's like
mm.
I believe that God allows things in our lives along the way to prepare us for the
Yes.
next role, and that was certainly one of those preparation things. I think that in the OR, I could so many times just seeing God's presence when it's like if I didn't have the wisdom or I didn't know what to say, just to say, no, Lord, how should I handle this? And just
Mm,
allowing just God to give me a calmness and not a reactiveness is so important,
mm.
especially in the OR.
Absolutely. And I'm sure people saw that calmness in you, and especially the families of the patients really
Yes.
appreciated
Yes.
that.
When in the early years, I would take a lot of call and I would go into work in the middle of the night for emergency surgeries, and the families would be waiting. And
Mm,
especially if it was a long procedure. And as we were, nearing the end, I would go out into the lounge and just give them a quick update and say, we're going to be closing and things are going well. And just that, that
mm, yeah.
reassurance to the families is so, so important.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah, but it's just like one time I had one of my staff members say, you're so calm, and I had to say, it's not me, it's the Lord through me. It's
Yeah.
not on my own power.
Yes, yes. What a great thing. And you retired recently. How many years ago did you
I
retire?
retired in 2020. I actually retired the January of
Oh,
2020.
okay.
And then my boss wanted me to stay on registry
During
um,
COVID.
during COVID just
Mhm,
to be able to help with some audits and
mhm.
different things. And so then COVID hit and I was deemed non-essential. And so I did a report from home, and I think in the next 2 years I went into the hospital maybe 5 times.
Wow.
And I said to her, do you think it's time, or do you want me to, still be
Hmm.
here? And she said, I'm good if you're good. I said,
Oh,
I'm good. And so I don't like change. And so it was, again, that was God's hand and just letting me slowly retire and not
that's
have it be an
great.
abrupt walk out the door
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
over. So yeah, so we know
Yes.
it was time.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Abrupt out the door is difficult.
Yes.
And so I'm glad you had that, experience. Now, in your retirement, you've done a lot and you're expanded on what you had begun prior. And now tell us about your ministry, not only with others, in your church or where you live, but with your grandchildren and children.
So my grandchildren and my children, Dave and I we're so blessed. We have 4 adult children and we have 10 grandchildren, and we have amazing children in loves that we can come alongside. And it's so fun. But I love that our children still will ask our advice on things and ask
Mhm.
us to pray about things. And the girls especially, I always thought that my daughters would live close and my sons would move away, but it's the opposite.
Mm.
And so just talking on the phone with my daughters and just praying on the phone with them has been such a joy to come
Mhm.
alongside them and support them and encourage them, and help encourage them to trust the Lord in their current
Of
situation.
course, of course. Tell us about your days now.
Oh, our days are fun. Our days are very different in the winter than they are in the summer. Let me start with winter. We watch, we call them the local five,
Mhm.
our 5 grandchildren that live locally. We've watched them. Actually, my husband started watching them the year before I retired. The two youngest he had, 4 month, uh, 4 month or a 7 month old and a 3 month old that he watched all day long by himself
God
for a
bless him.
year before I
Wow,
retired.
that
And
is
so
amazing.
we've carried that on, and it's just fun we read lots of stories.
Mhm.
We play, somebody asked me, what kind of games do you like to play? And I said, well, right now we're into Go Fish and Uno because those are the
Yes,
games
yes,
that we play with the kids.
yeah.
And so we play games. I go to Pinterest and I look for toddler activities, and we
Mhm.
put tape on the floor to prompt different activities so we can be active when it's freezing cold outside, but we go outside
Mhm.
and we shovel. We refer to doing things as Papa, Grandma, do you have chores we can do? And the
Yeah.
kids just love to do chores.
Oh,
It's so fun. And we fill the bird feeder, and even our kids know the names of so many birds. And we have a big picture window,
wow.
and sometimes the birds will just be chased by a hawk, or they'll fly
Mhm.
right into that window. And it's just,
That's
sometimes it's
great.
rather traumatic because they don't survive, but sometimes we see them fly away.
Oh,
But so that it's fun, the chores that we do, or the
yes.
repairs that Papa will do, with the
Mm,
kids. It's just like,
yeah.
I think Papa can fix anything. And one of our sons was a little upset because one of the grandchildren said, when he said, well, let's go to Menards. And he said to his dad, well, to Papa's Menards. And my
Ah,
son said, well, it's our Menards too. And so it's like everything is
that's,
Papa's,
mhm.
and Papa, they just love following Papa
Oh,
around. And then in the summer, the spring, the summer, and the fall, we're outside so much. And,
mhm.
it's like
Gardening.
gardening. And if Papa starts his tractor and the kids will hear it start, they just stop whatever they're doing and they make a beeline for that tractor and they climb up on his lap. And it has a big bucket in the front, and they'll
Wow.
ride in the bucket. And it's so
Nice.
much fun. But they help us pick up sticks in the yard, and they, play in the
Mhm.
sandbox, and when I
Go in
was
the pool.
they go in the pool. They
Mhm.
spend hours swimming in the pool.
Mhm.
They've all learned to, jump
Right.
off the diving board and swim. We just have one that has a puddle jumper still.
Yeah.
Everybody else has learned how to swim, and it's like, Grandma, what else can I do to learn how to swim better? Just
Yes.
learning different strokes, and
Right.
learning to Papa has taught them how to dive, and
Oh.
it's just we spend hours out in the pool. And last fall I was cleaning up some of my perennials, and two of the boys said, oh, can we help? And so I gave them, they each had a trowel, and they said, Grandma, we're digging for dinosaur bones.
Ooh,
And
I love
oh,
that.
it was, as I was trimming the perennials, they were digging. They never
Yeah.
found any, but
They use their imagination though. That is so
imagination,
cool.
imagination. It's like it's so much fun.
It
And they
is.
bring their bikes and their scooters, and they can drive. We have a big U-shaped driveway, and they know they can go from one sidewalk by the front door all the way around to the edge of the pool, but they can't go any closer to the road than that.
Wow.
And so, yeah,
And
it's just fun.
and now, Julie, your great grandfather built your house?
Yes, my
Wow.
great
Tell us
grandfather.
about that.
So it's kind of fun because we live on Army Trail Road, and the road behind us is Smith Road, and my maiden name is Smith. And
Hmm.
so John
That's right.
Smith my great great grandfather built a farmhouse there, and my great grandfather and great grandmother Jenny Stearns, and in Bartlett, where we attend church, Stearns Road was named after my great
Yes.
grandma, and she was actually the granddaughter of Mark Dunham from Dunham Road in
Are you
Wayne
kidding?
that built the Dunham Castle.
I never
And so,
realized all of
oh,
that.
little
Wow.
trivia.
I love that.
So yeah, so I've lived in our home all but 3 years of my life.
I love
So
that. Oh,
it's been fun.
wonderful. Oh, that is great. And it's always been a great family home, not only for your family, but for all the
Yes.
community.
It's been so fun. It's like, and we love to garden, and
Yeah.
the kids will go out and, help us plant things. They love to plant the potatoes. We'll dig the hole, and they'll put the potato down in the hole, and then to
Hmm.
see it sprout, and they'll
Hmm.
help dig carrots and pick cherry tomatoes, and they
Yeah.
just love to do all of that stuff. And if from the time they could walk, they would go over and stand by the raspberry patch and pick raspberries. My dad
Mm.
planted all those raspberries, and
Yeah.
Dave prunes them every year, and
Mm.
that's his. Those are his babies, the
Yes.
raspberry plants. But
Yes.
we freeze like 50 gallons of raspberries every
Wow.
year, and then we um, make jam as a
Yes. She brought me some
Oh,
jam and it's delicious.
so it's fun.
Yes.
But we do. It's like I was raised, my parents, wanted to open our home up to, for God's purposes. And
Mhm.
so Dave and I wanted to do that also. And so it's been
Yes,
fun.
and
I
you
don't know how
have.
many years we've hosted church picnics in our yard, and
Yes.
anywhere from, 150 to 350 people come, and it's a potluck, and it's so
It is.
enjoyable, and
Yes.
just you can just sit and relax and visit with one another,
Mhm.
with no agenda. The kids can run around and play in the
Mhm.
yard and play soccer and softball, and
Mhm.
do whatever they want, and
Yes.
swim, and it's a lot of fun.
Wonderful, wonderful memories for us too.
Yes.
And can you tell us about other things that you do, like at church?
So I'm real involved in women's ministry, and that's so wonderful. It's just how can how can I come alongside women? And what I mean by coming alongside them, it's like when there's something hard in their life, because we all have hard things in our life, how can we look at that situation through the lens of who God is? How can we learn more? How can we be in the Word, learning more of God's character so that we
Mhm.
know we can trust Him? Because I think that, if a
Mhm.
hard thing happens, we've had hard things in
Oh,
our
yeah,
lives, and
absolutely.
when a hard things happens, or we have a decision to make, it's not worrying about it. It's
Mhm.
not, but it's thinking about what's true, what's right. I think of Philippians 4:8, and
Yeah.
and practicing those things, and it's like realigning what we're thinking with who God is, and then
Mhm.
trusting Him, and just the hope that we can have
Mm.
in his plan, his sovereign plan, his purpose for our lives, and then just to have that overwhelming peace because we're trusting him. But just
Absolutely.
encouraging women. And so I tease, I double dip for Bible study. I go to the Wednesday morning and the Wednesday evening Bible study, and it's just really fun to do that. But just to get to know
Yeah.
women and to pray for them, and
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know, to
Yeah.
do
That's
Bible
great.
study in community is just, that's what God's called us to
It
do.
is. And that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And in closing, can you give us like your favorite verse through the years? I think I know what it is, but go ahead and share it with our
Well,
audience.
my favorite verse is Psalm 37, 4 and 5. How when we commit our way to the Lord and we trust him, and we delight in him, he will give us the desires of our heart. And it's not delighting on Julie's plans, and God will give Julie what she wants, but it's that whole process of when I delight, I'm aligning my will with God's will, and I'm trusting his plan. And it's kind of neat because on the inside of my wedding ring, Dave had engraved, delighting has given me my heart's desire. And so that's just really special. And back in the day when we first had, emails,
Yeah.
my email address is delighting@sbcglobal.net. And when different people will say, "What's your email?" and I'll say that. And like if it's somebody at a store, I'll say, "Well, it comes from Psalm 37."
Yes.
And it's just
Yeah.
kind of fun,
I love
And
that.
so, yeah.
I
And
love
it's a good reminder. It's like, Julie, are you delighting or are you fretting?
Yes.
And I want to
Yes.
delight
Perfect.
because I think it's
Perfect.
so important for us to speak truth to our minds and our hearts so that
It
we can
is.
live it.
Always, always. Thank you so much for being here today. I will continue to pray for you as I have been through the years and stay close.
I
So
know, Tina.
God bless you,
We just
Julie.
love you guys.
We love you too so much.
Mm.
Thank you for being here with us today.